Good morning. My name is Joni Salomon. I am a family law attorney and I specialize in family law. I am happy to be here today and I'm happy that you decided to join me. Today is the first episode and I thought it would be very special to air it on Independence Day when we are celebrating 250 years of America being independent and free. However, there are millions of people not free. And so I asked the deeper question, what truly is freedom? And one of the subjects that is near and dear to me is domestic violence. And it's a very, very tough subject to talk about. It's a very tough subject to dive into just because domestic violence is so hidden and so secret and it occurs behind closed doors and no one really sees it. And so I just thought it was fitting for today. This show is going to be about when real life meets relationships and the law, because all three of those things sometimes collide. And so we're going to try to separate the fact from the fiction, answer questions, break down cases that are making the headlines, and help recognize those red flags before they become courtroom exhibits. So let's get started. Before I do, I want to talk about this book. It's called No Visible Bruises, What We Don't Know About Domestic Violence Can Kill Us. And it's by Rachel Louise Snyder. And I wasn't going to buy it because I already know that you don't need bruises or a broken jaw or a shattered tooth to prove that domestic violence is occurring in a relationship. And I'm speaking as an attorney that has a domestic violence case in court. Sometimes coercive control can be proven where there are no bruises. It's one of the most toughest cases to try to prove because there are no bruises. And oftentimes there's not much evidence. And so trying to prove those types of cases proved to be really, really tough. But what brought me to buy this book, and I was looking at it over and over again, and I was like, yeah, I already know that. I'm not going to buy it. But you learn something every day. I was reading just the preface the other morning, and I got done, and I hadn't even hit chapter 1, and my head was freaking spinning. But listen to this. I'm going to read this one line that really stopped me. The UNODC, that's the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Okay, and this book is kind of old. It was published in 2019, but imagine in 2026. Okay, this is 2017. Okay, the UNODC report called home the most dangerous place for women. I mean, that was just mind-blowing. I can't imagine, what it would be today. And then here's another line. This is what I know to be true. Domestic violence, it is most often hidden from even one's closest confidants. And on many occasions, the physical violence is far less damaging than the emotional and verbal violence. That's overwhelmingly crazy, but it's true. And I could go on and quote all kind of things from this book, but I think it sets the stage for what I want to talk about today. And it's this case that comes out of Tennessee. I think they were coining it like the poison pregnant murder trial or something like that. And I'm ad-libbing on what happened in this case. But I followed it and I heard the testimony, opening arguments, closing arguments. So let me see if I can break it down to help you understand where real life, relationships, and the law collide, and why it's so important to see the red flags. So important to see the red flags so that you don't end up like Jade. Jade was 6 months pregnant. You can see her here. She's just gloating. She's got her ultrasound and she's holding up Ben and Jerry's and it says half baked. You can't see, the picture's kind of blurry. But she died on her 25th birthday at the hands, and I can say it's not alleged because he was convicted on 4 counts of murder, including murder of the baby, Jade. All 4 counts convicted. It came down earlier this week. First degree premeditated murder of the baby and Jade, and then 2 other counts of murder. And what struck me was there was red flags, but they were very, very subtle. There was testimony early on. There was a witness who came early on who dated Blaze. His name is Blaze, the defendant who was guilty of murdering Jade. His name is Blaze. There was testimony from Blaze's ex-girlfriend from many years prior when they were in college, and he got her pregnant and she ended up having an abortion. However, after their dating relationship, she recalls having a conversation with him where he got someone else pregnant, and he was asking her if she could get him some abortion pills because he was going to sneak it in his mother-to-be of his child drink to have her have an abortion. It never happened. But that just lets you know the mens rea, the mind of this guy. So it doesn't seem so far-fetched that he spiked Jade's drink. And the prosecution alleged that the thing he spiked in her drink was liquid cocaine. Liquid cocaine. And she was pregnant and she died. Now, I'm going to see if I can make you understand what's going on here. So the accused, Blaze, made it very clear to Jade he wanted nothing to do with this baby. Absolutely nothing. And that if she decided to have the baby, she was on her own. She was on her own. He wanted nothing to do with it. He was done. They ended up breaking up. I don't even know if they were really seriously dating. They had met on Hinge, and I think they knew each other 90 days before she got pregnant, according to the defense. And remember, I'm ad-libbing here, okay? You got to watch the trial to get the finite details, but I'm ad-libbing. So they're on and off, and it's just not really a girlfriend and boyfriend type thing. But anyway, let's fast forward to the night of the incident. So she invites Blaze over to her apartment, and they're having a date night. She's cooking a meal. I think it was Alfredo and some chocolate chip cookies or some cookies. And they have pink lemonade and some V8 Splash there. And she's got 2 blank canvases, 2 small blank canvases. They're going to do like a paint and sip without the alcohol. Okay. So Jade has a best friend, Nige, and Nige is invited along with her friend Keontae over to Jade's house to pick up some food during this date night. So those two arrive and they pick up their food. Nothing eventful, they said, is happening, other than Nige noted that the painting that Keontae, or the painting that Blaze, the accused, painted was he on a canvas, a white canvas, he painted it all black and left a hole that was white. And it looked like to me some white doves all around the black part of the painting, just really weird with this hole in the middle. And he made the comment, something like, if you look deep, the more you look, the deeper you go, or something, or the further you fall, or something. Just real crazy. When, on the other hand, Jade had painted a painting for the baby's room, and it was, colorful, and it had like hope and love and inspiration on it. But other than that, and him shoveling or, scoring through some Uno cards, nothing really eventful was going on. So Keontae was with her, and the best friend and Keontae went over to Jade's house, got the food, and left. About less than an hour later, Nige receives a phone call from Jade, and she's speaking to Blaze. So best friend gets a call. She could hear her best friend speak to Blaze through the phone. Now, mind you, Nige didn't understand or didn't know, but this was Jade's last dying words. So she picks up the phone and she hears her best friend say to her, "I know you put something in my drink. Blaze, I know you did it. I can't feel my feet. I can't move my bottom half of my body. You put something in my drink. You trying to hurt the baby. I know you did this to hurt the baby." And Nige's freaking out, going, "Jade, what are you talking about? I can't hear you. What's going on? What's going on?" And then the phone drops. So Nige, I hope I'm saying her name right, calls Keontae and is like, "Oh my God, something's happening to Jade." And so they three-way call Jade's phone number back. And Blaze answers the phone. And here's Nige. I hope I'm saying her name right. She's on the stand testifying about her best friend. And this is the kind of best friend you always want. I mean, just pure-hearted, just sweet as pie. When she learned that Blaze wanted nothing to do with the baby, she was like, "I guess I'll have to be the dad." I mean, just a sweet girl, okay? She's the one who arrived to Jade's house with Keontae. And Keontae was just, he reminds me of my nephew. I mean, he was just real. He was solid. He's actually a dental student at Meharry Medical School. And he's just real cool. He just was real. They tried to impeach him on the stand, and they couldn't. The defense came for him, but they couldn't penetrate him. More about that later. So they're all three on this phone call, and Blaze picks up, and Keontae, he's just so real. He's like, "Bruh, tell me you didn't do anything to that girl. Tell me you did not do anything to that girl." And Blaze said, "I didn't do anything. I don't know what's going on. I didn't do anything." So when Keontae was on the stand, a couple of things kind of stood out for me. And the first thing that stood out was he was just a solid witness. The defense came for his neck. I mean, they tried to punch holes. They made some fatal flaws with Keontae. Number one, they tried to, let me just back up. When we were in law school, or when you're in school learning how to do trials, the first thing you learn is how to cross-examine a witness. And you never, ever ask a witness that you're cross-examining a question that you don't know the answer to. Okay? You never ask them a question you don't know the answer to. And you never ask them a question assuming they're going to tell the truth. You got to have the backup to show that they're a lie. If you don't have it, don't ask the question. So the defense asks him, "Sir, weren't you convicted of a misdemeanor? I think it was like grand theft." And Keontae's like, "Not that I know of." They're like, "Yeah, you were convicted of a misdemeanor grand theft." He was like, "No, not that I'm aware of." And then it fell flat because they had no proof to show that he was convicted of anything. He is clean. So then they ask him, can you tell us, how was, when you had spoken to Blaze that night, what was, your outcome of his demeanor? And he's saying something like, he sounded, like he was, panicking, and he had a lot of anxiety and panic. And so they left him there. And the prosecution said, "Can you explain to us, what do you mean by panic and anxiety?" And Keontae said, "I don't know what I can say on the stand, but it sounded like, oh shit, I effed up." And the cross-examiner, the defense, got back up, and they shouldn't have, but they said, "Keontae, have you ever told anyone that Blaze sounded like, oh shit, I fucked up?" At that moment, I'm like, why are you asking him an open-ended question? You never on cross ask a W question. Who, why, where, what, and then 1H, how. Okay? But he asked him. And what does Keontae say? "Yes, I have." And then the defense does it again. When have you ever told someone that, it sounded like Blaze was like, oh shit, I fucked up? And Keontae goes, I told the DA. And the defense goes, "But you didn't tell the investigator." And Keontae goes, "Well, they never asked me." And so that was horrible. But then they made another horrible error. The defense has the transcripts and goes, "Well, I want you to, will it refresh your recollection if I play for you the investigation where you were being investigated by the prosecution and you tell me where it says that they didn't ask you that question?" And Keontae said, "Yeah, you could play it." But here's another fatal error. Prosecution stood up, objected. Where's the transcripts? The defense had one set of transcripts. Anybody knows if you're going to play audio in court, you got to have the transcripts. Not just one set, but you've got to have one for the judge because they got to follow along, make sure it says what you say it says. Number 2, you got to have one for the court reporter. Number 3, you got to have one for the defense. Number 4, you got to have one for yourself. And number 5, you got to have one for the witness on the stand. So there's only one transcript. So now what? And the judge saved him. The judge says, why don't you give the transcript to Keontae, let him look through it and see if it refreshes his recollection. That's what happened. So Keontae's looking through the transcripts and it takes forever. And at some point, Keontae was like, look, I ain't got time for this. And the defense was like, nope, you need to read it. Keontae goes, yeah, no, it's not here. They never asked me the question. Oh, just a bad moment for the defense. And what does the prosecution do? They stand up and they say, Keontae, the investigator never asked you to describe the panic in Blaze's voice, correct? He goes, correct. He goes, but we did, right? Keontae goes, yes. I mean, just a moment of just error on the behalf of the defense. But I mean, the defense had a bad set of facts to work with. I'm going to give them that, a bad set of facts. So you can't really do much with a witness like Keontae. I mean, he's just solid, so you ask maybe 1 or 2 questions and get him off the stand. He was just too powerful. And then we get to the paramedic. So at some point, Blaze decides he's going to call 911. At this point, Jade has been foaming at the mouth. She's thrown up. It was just all bad. So the paramedics arrived to the scene. And the paramedic was told by Blaze that she ate bad food. She's having an allergic reaction. But the problem for Blaze is he was acting a whole fool at the time. By the time the paramedics came, okay, they get on the scene. They're trying to administer patient care, and here he is interfering with them being able to properly care for Jade to the point where they are unable to do CPR on the patient because he's handsy, according to the witness, and he won't let them turn her over. He won't let them administer any care, and they designated the scene as unsafe. What does unsafe mean? Meaning they had to do something called, I learned this, a load and go. And so the witness was testifying that they loaded up the patient and left the scene. So they couldn't even administer probably what would have been life-saving measures on Jade because of Blaze. Anyway, the family had to end up announcing or pulling the life support on Jade, and she was 6 months pregnant, and it was her 25th birthday. Just a horrible, horrible set of facts. So one of the things that really struck me in the testimony early on was how Blaze wanted their relationship to be a secret, how he wanted her pregnancy to be a secret, how he didn't want anyone to know. There was testimony that she couldn't post about the pregnancy. She couldn't post about their relationship. And that is a red flag because domestic violence hides in secrecy and shame. Victims don't tell. Victims don't voice what the abuser is doing to them. On the outside, I mean, the mother of Blaze testified, and she testified that he was, this A student, and, always other kids wanted to be around, and he was a football player, and he never gave her any trouble. And on the outside, it looks wonderful. You think they are people just love them. But to the victims, they are a nightmare. And so the red flag was the secrecy, the no one can know, the no one knew about her pregnancy. And what was interesting is it did come out that Jade was getting ready to have a big baby shower, big birthday party. She was coming out. She was telling the world, this baby's coming. I'm excited. Over Blaze's objections. And this happened to her. In the defense closing arguments, let me start here. If you don't understand domestic violence, you're never going to understand the victims, and you're never going to understand the testimony. The moment you ask yourself, why would she invite him over if she knew he didn't want to have anything to do with this baby? Okay. The moment you ask yourself that is the moment you know you don't understand domestic violence. And it's the moment you need to start researching. And this is a good place. This book is so good. I'm not even halfway through it. I mean, this is where I'm at in terms of, I still got this whole load. And I consider myself an expert. And I've considered myself knowing. I mean, the reason why I almost didn't buy this book is because I figured I knew it all. But you learn something every day, and you don't know it all. But let me say this. The phone call from Jade to her best friend that night after liquid cocaine was put in her drink. And by the way, they never found that cup. That phone call told me everything I needed to know, because she not only named her killer, but she knew who did it to her, what he did to her, and why. She said, I know you have something in your pocket, Blaze. I know you put something in my drink. I know you did something to hurt the baby. You did it to hurt the baby. She knew he didn't want that child. He had given her signs that this was even possible. Like, if I'm drinking something and I'm not going to accuse the person that, in the room with me of doing something unless I really believe they're capable of it, or I really believe they would harm me. So the fact that she knew led me to believe he had shown signs of abuse early on. And so you want to ask the question, why would she invite him to her house for date night when she, one, knows he's abusive, I believe, and two, he never wanted anything to do with the baby. So why are you inviting him over to paint canvases for the baby room? And you know this man wants nothing to do with you or the baby. The moment you ask yourself that, again, you know nothing about domestic violence, and that's a whole nother show with probably a therapist and a psychotherapist. And I'm not equipped to answer that question, but I am equipped to tell you that you don't understand domestic violence if you're asking that question. And that takes me to why I bought this book. No visible bruises, because people think you need a broken tooth and a jaw. And we talked about coercive control and how hard it is to prove coercive control. But deeper than that is understanding that domestic violence doesn't carry bruises all the time. And the most cruel form of domestic violence, I believe, is the ones that don't carry the bruises, because they're the hardest to prove. And so in situations like this, you do look at those red flags and the secrecy. Why are we keeping this relationship a secret? Why are we not announcing that I'm having a baby? And Jade's mother took the stand, and she never met Blaze. Here's the man that is the father of her daughter's child. She never met the man. Mind you, she lives in another state. But I'm saying, anytime you want to hold on to secrets, or someone wants you to hold on to secrets, or not share something as intimate as your pregnancy, and not wanting anyone to know that they're the father, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. So we got to recognize those things. And recognition is half the battle, and we're going to get into what to do once it's recognized, but that's a whole nother show. Oftentimes, because I don't do criminal law, I do family law and domestic violence. Thank God, my clients are still with me. They're able to testify about the abuse. But let me read you this line. What researchers have learned from combat soldiers and football players and car accident victims is only now making its way into domestic violence communities. That the poor recall, the recanting, the changing details, along with other markers like anxiety, hypervigilance, and headaches, can all be signs of TBI. That's traumatic brain injury. So when I have clients that have experienced, especially coercive control, and they're on the stand and they're trying to testify, they're nervous, they're anxious, and they have traumatic brain injury. You can imagine on the stand trying to get the testimony out. And so, why did I buy this book? I'll tell you. Actually had a case, and I can't really discuss the intimate details, but I had a case I was trying, and my client was a victim of coercive control. And I was doing my closing, and with coercive control, when you don't have the black eyes and the, sock to the chin, and the bruises, you're putting together for the court, you're painting a picture of coercive control. And so I'm tying it all together in a nice tight bow for the court. And I'm going in, and I'm on a roll. And the judge stops me and questions me. And first of all, I was taken aback, because you're interrupting my closing. I didn't appreciate that. And who does that? In my 20-something years of practicing, I never had a judge, other than to tell me my time is up, stop me in my closing and ask me a question. And he says, "You didn't prove physical harm." And I've never argued with the judge before. I've never, raised my voice at a judge. But I totally forgot where I was. And I said, I don't have to prove physical abuse. Although I have proven some of it, I don't have to prove physical abuse. And I was arguing with the court. So I bought this because A lot of people don't know. They don't know about coercive control and emotional abuse, and that it's worse than physical abuse at times. I think it's worse. And it's so hard to prove. And let me tell you why. And it goes to this line. I'm going to read the book again. I learned in the course of this research, among the most difficult of subjects to report on. It is vast and unwieldy, but it's also utterly hidden. And that's domestic violence. That's domestic violence. It's hidden. You can't see it. And she goes on to talk about coercive control. So listen to this. Coercive control. And then she defines it. It's ways an abuser might dominate and control every aspect of a victim's life without ever laying a hand on her. And ultimately, coercive control is about stealing someone's freedom entirely without ever laying a hand on them. That's powerful. So when you're talking about proving coercive control in court with a victim who has traumatic brain injury, how do you do it? Oftentimes you don't have the evidence to prove it. You just don't. But most of the time you do. And you use what you have and you tie those pieces together. And it's usually text messages and ring cams and cameras, because most abusers want to control their victims by watching them all the time. They'll put cameras in the house, in the garage. There's cameras that record them as they walk out the door. When they get out the door, there's a ring camera. Cameras everywhere. And they forget that the cameras are also watching them. I can't say that, but just know that it's tough to prove. And I'm saying all this and I'm talking about all this today because I watched Jade's mother take the stand. And I don't know where she got the strength to testify on her daughter's behalf. But she got up there and she testified about her daughter. She testified about how she was told not to speak of the pregnancy and the secrecy. She never really talked to Blaze. Maybe like she was on the phone with Jade and Blade was there and she said, "Oh, tell him hi." That was the extent of it. But I thought about my own two daughters and I thought, may they never find or experience a man like this, so dangerous. And the secrecy and I believe, coercive control that came out through text messages in the trial, may that never find them, ever. And so we have to talk about these hard subjects and how relationships, the law, domestic violence collide. And it's hard to show. But when you look at everything in like now, hindsight is 2020 in this relationship, because we can now go back and look at what is and what wasn't. For example, in the defense's closing, what struck me is, they didn't understand domestic violence. The defense, in the closing, was trying to punch holes in the prosecution's case, was trying to raise a reasonable doubt, but they couldn't. And they pointed to these text messages between the parties, and they said, he's just telling her, get real. You got to be real about this. And no, he wasn't telling her to be real about this pregnancy. He was trying to get her to end the pregnancy. That's what he was trying to do. And at one point, the defense said to the jury in closing argument that Blaze couldn't have done this. It doesn't make sense for him to do this. If he didn't want the pregnancy, he would have ended it. Wouldn't it be easier to end it in the first 3 months? Most people's pregnancies, most people don't tell anybody they're pregnant in the first 3 months. Wouldn't it have been easier for him to put the liquid cocaine in her drink in the first 3 months, or do something to end the pregnancy in the first 3 months? Why wait till she's 6 months pregnant? It just doesn't make any sense. Why? And the problem is, when you try to make sense of domestic violence, it will never make sense. None of this makes any sense. Why would someone put liquid cocaine in anyone's drink anyway? Like, how do you come up with that? None of this stuff makes sense. How did he think he was going to get away with this? That doesn't make any sense. Why would he put liquid cocaine in her drink, call 911 and tell them that she's having an allergic reaction? Then when the paramedics get there, interfere with their ability to do the job and think he's going to get away with this? It makes no sense. Domestic violence makes no sense. But you got to look at all the indicia and tie it in a bow. So I end today with a quote you may have heard me say, and that is, love hard, leave stronger. And one of the most difficult things to do is to get out of a domestic violence situation. And not only do we want to leave stronger, we want to leave smarter. You have to plan your way out. And most of the time, the most dangerous time for a victim is when she leaves. And I say she because the overwhelming evidence suggests that women are victims of domestic violence. And even though men are victims in LGBTQ community, there's victims, but women by far, I think it's like 85-90%, are overwhelmingly the victims of domestic violence. So leaving is just almost next to impossible, but it's possible. And leaving smarter and leaving stronger than when you came in. And so in closing, as we celebrate our freedom, it isn't just a holiday. It's a decision you make every day. And you have to love hard, leave smarter, leave stronger, and you have to plan your way out. And you have to look at those red flags. And if it's not right, if it doesn't seem right, you got to trust your intuition. And one of the things that, I was an avid Oprah Winfrey fan in college, and I watched her show all the time. It's one of the reasons why I'm a vegan, and I'll get into that later. But One of the things she said on her show was, there's two things that strike me. One of the things she said on her show was, when the horse is dead, get off. And she was talking about relationships. When the horse is dead, get off. And sometimes we play around with that. We go back, we break up, we make up, it's dangerous out there. Riding a dead horse. I mean, just think about it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Why do it? It's easier said than done. And then the other thing I will never forget about the Oprah show is the writing's on the wall. The writing's on the wall. Read it. The writing's on the wall. Read it. Those are the two things that stand out to me. And that's what I leave you today with. If you know someone that could benefit from hearing the show or seeing the show, send it to them. If you have any comments, leave it in the comment section. I'll try to answer your questions. But thank you for spending part of your Independence Day today with me. And I look forward to next week. Remember, love hard, leave smarter. Freedom isn't just a holiday. It's a decision you make every day. Enjoy your freedom. It's been On One.